Hey, this is Grayve, and in this tutorial I'm going to continue on and show you how to make a working map based on sort of the introductory things that have been shown in the first tutorial. Just continuing on that introduction, the first tutorial is not necessarily required, but it's going to give you a lot of hotkey information and just a good, valid, thorough intro of what to expect as far as the layout of the editor and basically the simple commands, so how to move the camera, where the different settings can be found, and simple hotkeys and things of this nature. So you don't have to watch it. I understand it's like a 40-minute video, so if you want to jump right in, you probably can. The hotkey stuff and all that's going to be pretty relevant throughout, circumstantially as it comes up and is needed. So you might pick that stuff up anyway, irregardless of if you've seen that first one or not. So yeah, this is the second video in the series, and in this we're just basically going to make a basic working map, and I'm going to show you the essentials of what constitutes a working map for Killing Floor. So we'll do a trader, we'll do just kind of a simple room, some obstructions and obstacles or whatever, somewhat of a layout. We'll do the AI navigation. I'll introduce you to some of the workflow around the editor while you're doing these things, lighting, player starts, and basically zombie volumes and things of this nature, and the level information like the title of the map and the description and things like this. So when you come in, you got this blank just grid looking thing. This is just the the working grid. I believe each one of these is about 2048 by 2048 units, each one of these squares. It could be twice as much though, it could be 4096. But if you don't have your layout like this and you want to have this view, you're going to go to View, Viewports, Configure, and it's going to be this third one here. I think the default is this first one. And that will give you the third, orthogonal panels and then the perspective view. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to introduce you to the concept of add and subtracts, and just make a basic room and things like this. But I think before I do that, I'm going to show you how to save the map, the prefixes and the Killing Floor mapping titles in the file name, and then how to do the description and things like that. So first off, let's save our map. It should by default automatically plug you into your your map folder. If it doesn't, it should be, just look at this directory on mine, and if you have a 32-bit operating system, it's not going to be program files 86, it'll just be program files, so don't get confused by that. But it should save you, or take you to the right directory from the beginning. So if you go down to these other maps that are on here, you could see that pretty much all of them have a KF sort of acronym, or abbreviation, whatever you want to call it, prefixed on there into the file name, and then there's a hyphen. This is not for style or organization, really. If it is organization, it's for code. But basically what it is it's telling the game, the INI file, whatever controls this, that this is a map is intended for a certain game type. So the KF acronym or abbreviation is basically just telling the game that this map is going to be coded and supposed to be loaded up through the menu of the Killing Floor game type, so just KF. And if you see the KFO game type, like Steamland and Fright Yard, things like that, that's Killing Floor objective. So depending on what you intend to do with your map, whether it's just wave-based game or objective mode or whatever other ones might be out there that are custom made, that's what that's going to be. So you have to do that in order to, if you want it to show up in the menu that it's supposed to show up in and work in game, and have the game type plugged into the map and working properly, you got to have that prefix on there. So we're going to do KF hyphen test basic map. So the best thing to do is save your map right away, even if you don't have a name for it. Just call it like work in progress or untitled something, I don't know. And that way you can constantly be saving it as you go in case you crash or something, because crashes happen. So now that our map is saved, if you want to ever go in and put in your information, I'll just show this right now so I don't forget later. You go to View, Level Properties, and it'll bring up this box here, this editing box, and you skip pretty much most of the stuff. The bloom's going to be important. That's the glow that comes off of the textures and things and the lighting and stuff like that. So we can adjust that later if that's too intense. That's kind of map specific as well. So most of the stuff you're going to do in here is going to be under this one tab called Level Summary. And all you're going to do is put in your name. The decode text name you're going to skip, that's unnecessary. The description is just the name of the map at tutorial level for YouTube, I guess. Extra info isn't necessary either. Those two things don't really show up in the menu, and they probably won't provide any benefits. I'm not even 100% sure what they do. Hide from menus is just how it sounds. The ideal player count doesn't work in Killing Floor, I don't think, but it is inherited from Unreal Tournament 2004, which this engine is inherited from, and so is Killing Floor. And that was intended so in that game, it will, if you use the map settings or whatever, it will allow this many players to come in, and so you don't have to put in it will just allow a certain number of AI players to spawn depending on the setting, which is based off the size of the map. But for Killing Floor, that is irrelevant because every Killing Floor map is always 6 players max, you know. So if you want to kind of aim for whatever you can, but for the most part you just really need to, you know, put 6 and 2 or something, just the default if you want that to show up, because that does show up in game. So if you want it to look more professional, I guess, for Killing Floor, just put like 6 and 2. Screenshot, all you're going to do for that is later you can take a picture of the screen. I don't know if I'm going to show that in this tutorial or another one because it's not really necessary for basic mapping, but it is kind of a part of, you know, getting your map to be professional looking. So it is kind of a fundamental, I guess. But you're just going to, essentially, all the way this works is it's just a selected texture in the texture browser that's just clicked on and plugged in right here, and that will just blow up on the screen when your map is selected in game. So you just select a texture and click use, and that's pretty much all that is. So getting your screenshot and into the editor is a different process, but once it is in, or you have the texture you want, that's all it is select it and plug it in. And then the title is exactly what it is too, how it sounds, just a simplified title. You don't need the KF acronym or any of that, and you can use spaces and stuff, so you can do a more, you know, official, legit looking title name, so it doesn't look like the crushed in file name, like the KF/test basic map. So you just put that in there, and so that's that. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce you to adds and subtracts. Adds and subtracts are basically how things get done as far as building rooms and shapes and things like this for the editor. So essentially you're just going to use these building blocks here. You can use the 2D shape editor here, but depending on what method you use, or irregardless of what method you use to build rooms and a brush, adds and subtracts are going to be the way that they're basically built into the game. So brush is essentially like geometric building blocks. It's kind of like the in-editor building blocks. It's how you build and sculpt geometry inside the editor, aside from importing content from Maya or a third-party program or something like that. It's kind of like static meshes, for example. Static meshes are a collage of geometry that was either created in the editor and put into this, you know, converted to a static mesh from brush, or it was imported from an export from some 3D modeling program. And these are very complicated compared to brush. These are meant for character models and decorative stuff in the map. They can be used for many purposes, but that's not brush. Brush is just simple geometry. It can look complicated, you can do a lot to it, but it's geometry that is built right in the editor and rendered in the editor, and you have to use brush to have a map playable. Even if it's one cube that you're inside, you still need at least one, because you can't survive in this black space. This black space is kind of like outer space. So basically there's add and subtract mode. These other modes here, de-intersect and intersect, are more playing along with more complicated ways of using add and subtract, I guess. More conceptual or circumstantial, but add and subtract are the main concepts. So for this tutorial I'll probably just go over add and subtract to keep it short and simple. But add is basically, if you have this black space here, you can't put an add inside of it. It has to have a subtract. So subtract is going to build inverted walls, where add is basically going to build exterior walls. So it's like interior versus exterior. So like an add will be like a cube, where a subtract version of that same shape, like a cube, we'll make like a room. So it's like a room opposed to a box, I guess you can say. The walls are going to face inward on the subtract of the room. If you make that same cube an add, it's going to look like a box, so it won't be a room. So we'll basically be doing that for this. So let me show you here. If I built a cube that was like 1,000 units, I'm trying to type in the dark, like that. If I click add, nothing's going to happen, but if you hide the brush builder with B, you can see there is something appearing there, but you can't build add inside outer space. You have to have a subtract to contain it. So there has to be some kind of room in this empty space for you to live in, to be survivable in, to have the map exist. So you can start building stuff in here and whatnot, but you won't be able to survive in it. You're not going to be able to spawn in it and walk around or even survive. You'll just spawn and die. So if you build a subtract, you can see we actually get a result now. You know, it makes a room. So now we can put a player start in here, lights, whatever we want. So what if I built another cube that was only 100 units? And there it is in the middle. Kind of hard to see because the walls are red. Let me change that real quick. Goddamn default texture. Okay. So now we got this room in the middle here. And if you see, the same thing happens for a subtract if it's added. If it's a subtract is subtracted into another subtract. Let me say this easier. If a subtract is made inside another subtract, it kind of has the same result as an add being made in this outer space. It just won't show up. The space has already been taken out of. There's already been something subtracted out. So you wouldn't get another result by subtracting again when you're already inside the space. If I pulled it outside of here, like I go to wireframe and I move this over, Ctrl drag, and then rebuild my geometry, take effect, you'll see that it will add to that space that hasn't been subtracted, but when it comes into the already subtracted space, it doesn't get a result because that's already been subtracted out. And then if we take this cube and we add it, you could see that that space is added back in. So now there's a box inside of this room. So those are basically the simple concept, or I guess introduction to how adds and subtracts work. So now that we have that, you should have a good understanding of how to build rooms and basic shape, the skeleton of your map, I guess. So yeah, depending on how you want to build your map, you can build your map out of very simple shapes, maybe a huge box, and then put a bunch of complicated static meshes in it to make like rooms and things. There's been plenty of maps that have done that. You can make all your map inside rooms and have no outside, therefore there's no giant box you have to build to put your whole map inside of it. There's many different ways you can go about doing it. It just depends on what kind of map you want and the freedoms you want of the players in it. If you want them to go outside into big spaces, an open map, or it's all interior, there's no outside, you know. Like Biotics Lab, for example, there's no exterior to that, but let's say like Wire, it's kind of got interiors and exteriors, so that map was probably built inside a giant cube of some kind. It's for the terrain and the outdoor areas. So for our layout, we're going to use the 2D shape editor, which is a really neat kind of a simple sculptor tool. You use this grid and you kind of just split segments and drag these vertices around, and then you can convert this two-dimensional shape to a three-dimensional shape of different types, so that it becomes brush to be used in here in the map. So yeah, let's do that. So you go to your 2D shape editor, and let's make some kind of an interesting room. Let's see here. How about for a basic map we make a spiral staircase cylinder. So if we wanted to make a cylinder using the 2D shape editor, we would take it and just move this, make sure that it's down the middle here, there's nothing going over this line, because this line is going to be like a rotational symmetry. It's going to be based on this. We're going to create a three-dimensional cylinder off of that, where this is going to be rotational symmetry. So this green point here is the world origin. That's how it's going to build it. So if you want to have this pretty much like right on this line, I think. That's the origin that everything's going to be kind of built around. In fact, you probably want to just leave that in the middle of the grid. not to touch that unless you really need to. So let's do that, and I think that'll be good. So we might need to scale that up, but just in case, save the shapes out. What I did is I made a shapes directory inside Killing Floor. It doesn't come with one, but I made one to save my 2D shapes in, because when you close out of this editor, it does not give you a prompt to save or anything. It's a sub-editor, but it doesn't give you a prompt to save your work or anything like that, and it doesn't save it for you in a temp location. When you close out of the editor, it crashes, and it doesn't reload the last shape you had edited. Once you close it and reopen it, it forces you to start over again. So just be aware of that and save your shapes if they're important, so you don't have to make them again. Call this test cylinder. And then these are your tools up here to actually create it into three-dimensional shapes. This is how you can create different linear segments, Bezier, add new segments, like split segments. If you wanted to add more sides, you would just, or more vertices to work with, you would just click on one of these vertices, and the dark edge that's selected here, that's highlighted, is going to be where it splits. So if you go to split side, you'll see that the box has appeared there, and you can just click delete and delete it. These up and down arrows are scale up and down. It will just double the size or reduce the size. You can flip vertically or horizontal, and things like that. So for this, we're going to create a revolved shape. Normally, if we're going to make a simple room, we do an extruded shape. We're probably one of these three up here, but for this, we're going to do revolved. So the direction we're going to revolve around, it gives us X, Y, and Z. We're probably going to revolve around, I believe, Y or X. Probably doesn't matter. Sides. Let's see what it makes off this. Okay, so there we go. If you make just simple default settings there, that's what it's going to look like. So sides per 360, we're going to have 12 sides. There we go. So it's saying that altogether there should be 12 sides in 360 degrees, and then you tell it that there's 12 sides. So that would be kind of our cylinder there. This doesn't look like it's going to be very big, so we're going to have to scale up again, probably a few times. And that should be pretty good. In fact, that should be a little bit too big. Scale that down. Yeah, I think that'll be okay. And save that, close, and let's see, right click on this. I want this to be right in the middle of the map. So we're going to go to reset, move to origin, and it will just reset its location. So then we're going to subtract. So now we got a big room in here. And we're not going to have any lighting or anything in here yet, because we haven't done anything to get lighting in here. We haven't built geometry. I'll introduce you to the workflow of how things are built and set up in here as far as lighting and AI. You can't just throw things in the editor and expect them to work immediately. It's not real time like that. You have to kind of render them in the editor so that they're playable, for the map to the code to know what the game to know what they are and how to use them. So you can't just go throwing in all these shapes and light bulbs and stuff and it will automatically just look good instantly and you can play it right on the fly. You have to sort of render it out. That might change in the future, and maybe even Unreal Engine 4, but for this one it's not like that. Not even Unreal Engine 3 is. So it's just necessary. So now that we've got that, let's build some kind of a staircase or something to hug the walls. There's a normal curved staircase and there's a spiral staircase. We're going to do the spiral. We're going to kind of have to guess the settings here. Let's see, the default is going to look like that. So if we go to the top view over here, this orthogonal view, we can get somewhat of an idea better of how it's going to come out. So the inner radius, let's see. Inner radius, I'm assuming, is this inner space there. Let's do about 300. There we go. And just keep typing in a number until it kind of gets to the wall. And we need more sides than that too. So we need number of steps per 360, 12, and then number of steps, so I guess we can do like 64 or something. So it's got a whole bunch. The step height, I think you can go as high as about 40. It's for stair height. I'm not sure about that. To make it so that you can actually walk up it. It's either 20 or 40, I can't remember. Let's do about 25. And then the step thickness, I'm not sure exactly what that is. Okay. Just how thick the steps are. Exactly how it sounds. Let's do 35. And we need a little bit more radius. Probably even like 700 or something. Almost 750. 60, yeah. That's good, but I don't want it to intercept the wall. Do 770. There we go. That's actually really pretty close. You can see that's pretty much fat right in there, almost like a glove. And now we just got to drag this down the floor and make more steps. So we go to the front or side view, we can see how close it is to the floor. Just kind of bring it up a little bit. So let's do that. Number of steps. Need to add more steps in there. Let's try like twice as much. That's pretty good. 128 stairs. Alright, I think that's everything. So now that we've done that, let's add that in. And as you can see, kind of, until we build lighting, it's going to look a little bit hard to notice, but yeah, they got stairs in there. Save that out. And now I'm going to introduce you to the workflow of how things are rendered so that they look proper. First off, actually, you can notice that the textures are very circular, and that looks kind of cool. But if you want the textures to line up so it just looks like a normal floor or box or whatever, so you can't see the seams or the faces, you can just do a Shift F, and that will select all floors, or you can even do a Shift B, which will be select all matching brush, select all the surfaces on that shape. Then you go to pen or alignment, you go to plan here and click align, and you can see it just kind of cleans it up a little bit and looks less obvious where the cuts are and the faces and stuff. So it looks a little bit better. We can also do that on the stairs. Select it, Shift B, planner. There we go. And the surface editor here is how we're going to change a lot of different things on the textures, whether it's their size, their alignment, the light map detail, like the shadow detail, and some other properties and flags and stuff. And it will also tell us some other things, how much lights are affecting it, and etc. So it got some useful settings there. After that, we're going to build geometry. Anytime you make a shape, I'll show you, I'll just go through this real quick. This is the workflow of how you basically are going to go about rendering things out, depending on what it is. So if it's brush at all, it's going to influence build geometry. So building geometry basically is just going to finalize or render out your brush that you've built, like these rooms here, these shapes, and make it so that they have the collision built and all the other things that they do. They collide with each other. All these different properties are basically being finalized and officialized, I guess, being rendered. So anytime you move a brush, anytime you rescale it, anytime you make a new one, you delete one, you have to build geometry again. And the lighting is basically anytime you put a light bulb in, anytime you move any lighting actors, if you change the color of it, if you move a room that's the light's affecting, things like that. So geometry and lighting are kind of hand in hand in a way, because if you build geometry, it resets the lighting on it, which means you have to build lighting again. If you move a light bulb, it makes the light maps on the brush go away, which means you have to build lighting again. So there's certain things that just impact the two of them if you affect one of them. So let's go ahead and put a light bulb in here. It doesn't show up instantly yet because I haven't built lighting the first time yet. So let's build lighting. It doesn't take very long, and there you go. As you can see, it's already got shadows and everything like that. So the moment you start moving this light, the shadows disappear because this engine does not have dynamic shadows. Even if it did, it would probably by default be set up to not have that on. Maybe. Unreal Engine 3, it will show it dynamically in this mode, but this one won't dynamically. Right. So we're just gonna kind of put some lights in here, give it some kind of an interesting feel, I guess. Let's do like a light color, like that or something, and just duplicate these. Maybe have two of them or so. Keep it kind of dark in the middle. And then this one's going to be basically like a sure. So the light color here, you just go to color and it will bring up this kind of swatch looking thing. You can make your own color, and or you can type in the numbers manually if you want to fine tune it. It goes as high as 255. The brightness is just the light and dark. The hue is the actual color, and the saturation is how desaturated or saturated it is. Obviously, if it's really vivid looking or more dull, so it looks more grayscale. So using those three, you can make pretty good colors. If you get really familiar with this, you probably would prefer to use this more than the other one, which sometimes I do. So now that we've done that, we got to build lighting. So we edited those lights, and now you can see that there's shadows on the stairs and things. So you can tell the shadows are kind of clunky looking. They're kind of low detail. We can try something. It might not work because of how big these faces are. There's a certain limit to how detailed a face can be. If it's a really big face like this, really big surface, I mean, face, surface, the same thing. If it's a really big surface, the lighting detail won't allow for really detailed shadows, but we can try anyway. So we're going to do a shift, I think it's a shift S, let me make sure about that, yeah, shift S, selects every surface in the map, and we're going to change the light value to 4, just something kind of low, and rebuild. See if it has any effect. Okay, yeah, it did. So as you can see, the shadows got a little spruced up, they look a little bit better, more kind of edged out and obvious, you know, more vivid. And that looks a little bit better. So now that we've done that, we can start putting in spawns. So let's see, we need player starts first off. So let's put in 6 player starts. Just do 1 and like duplicate it a number of times. Ctrl W is duplicate, and I'm moving these with Ctrl left and right drag. If you do both drags on the mouse at the same time, both clicks on the mouse, and then drag with Ctrl, it will move it up and down, but we're not going to want to do that for these. So yeah, just space them out kind of randomly. And these are considered navigation points, so that's the next thing I need to show you that's influenced up here to this rendering workflow, which is right here on build pass. Build pass is anything that's a navigation point. A navigation point is pretty much anything that the AI is going to use to navigate the map. And it has to do with player starts, because that's how you're rendered into the map and brought into the map. And the AI uses your starting point as a navigation point, just the way it works. So these are directional, by the way. If you want to change that direction, you can go to the top view and hold Control and right drag, and it will move the directional arrow a different direction if you want your players to spawn facing a different direction. So yeah. I'm going to show you something real quick. Go up to View and go to Show Paths. There's no shortcut key for it, so you have to do it this way. And you can see that the moment we build paths, there's a visual network that's built on the screen for us to look at. It's kind of interesting. So the white, I believe the white is the most obvious and clean-cut paths. There's no tricky navigation, there's nothing that the AI has to worry about, there's no tight spaces. And then when you see the blue and the green and the other colors like that, it means that they're more kind of secondary paths, or just tighter spaces kind of thing. So that's kind of how you can tell by the colors. The white is the most obvious choice, it's the most easy to access, and that's why that's colored that way. So if you get your menu here, this little sub-menu, you got things like static mesh, path node, player start, and light. I built the player starts and lights from this right-click menu, if you haven't noticed. Path node is the next one that's going to be really crucial, just like these two are. And the path node is kind of like the breadcrumbs and navigation points of the map that the AI is going to use to find you. So basically how the AI works real quick is it has to use these navigation points to track you down to your location, and on your player model, as you're running around through the map, you have a dynamic navigation point built into you that moves around and communicates with all of these statically rendered ones. So the AI basically, in order to get to you as you're moving around, it has to have, your connection has to be made to these other navigation points, and there's a certain distance before you lose connection to those. You don't have to just be in the line of sight of any of these. Like, you couldn't stand up on one of these stairs, and because you can see this or it can see you, the AI automatically knows how to get to you. It doesn't work that way. If you were up here on one of these steps and the AI was down here and they had these paths to use, they would never ever know how to get to you from up here, because there's no way they have of knowing how to navigate up these stairs. You can't assume that they're just going to magically know that there's stairs along the wall and they know how to go up them and get to you. They might be able to see you if you were like right here. They can probably make a connection to you because you might be close enough to one of these navigation points down here. You might not be out of reach, out of their distance to connect to these points. But they're still not going to know how to get from this point to your point. They're not going to know how to go from A to B. So you need to path that for them. So with that said, that's basically where path nodes come in. And there's many different types of navigation points. If you want to look at them, the different types, go to the actor class browser up here and just expand the navigation point category. And you got assault pass, doors, jump destination, jump pad. All these are for AI navigation, for the zombies to follow you, to reach you. And some of them are very circumstantial, temperamental, like the elevators and the ladder navigation points, and that's so the AI knows how to work with certain obstacles on the map, like ladders and elevators. You have to have special navigation points to tell the AI how to use those. So like I said, there's a certain rate, I guess, maximum limit of distance before they can't connect, before paths can't connect to each other. So if you want to test that for yourself to see how that is, you can just start moving your points around and keep rebuilding. As you can see, it lost contact at these points here. It could be because it's out of line of sight. If I move this out of the way, it wouldn't automatically reach it, so that's another thing. They have to be within line of sight of each other. See, there's no line of sight now. So the good way of testing that is just move your camera over to that navigation point. If you can't see the navigation points you want that one to connect to, you might want to consider moving it, obviously, to a different point. So if I put this one here, move the camera to it, it's probably going to make a connection to a few of those, assuming that the distance isn't too great. So the gold routes, I believe, are the most sketchy. I mean, they're really distant. I guess we can keep that one up there for now. If you build one over here, that one's going to be green. Just start building like a circle of them. Kind of the etiquette you want while you're building path nodes is just space them out a good 500. If it's an open room like this, do like a good 500, 600 units like this. You don't have to hug them against the wall, just keep them kind of spaced away from the wall, because if a player was hugging the wall, you're still within close distance of these navigation points so the AI can find you and get to you still. You don't need to have a path node in every 2 feet from each other in every area. They have good radius and distance to where they can still reach out and find the player or connect to each other and things like that. They're a good network, so you don't have to worry too much about that. So those ones are green. Let's start putting paths up the stairs. I'll just do a few of these stairs and then I'll pause and do the rest so you don't have to watch me do this. It's actually a fast way we can do this. I can just select these, duplicate him, drag him up, and then rotate him if I really wanted to, since it's a symmetrical spiral staircase. But there we go, there's a number pass. So as you can see now, they have the ability not only to jump down from any of these path nodes to the ones on the floor because there's connections to them, but they also have the ability to know exactly where a player is, so they can go and climb the stairs and start moving upwards to get to you. So I'm going to pause and finish connecting these paths, and I'll be back in just a sec. Alright, so I built all these in here, just pretty much duplicated a lot of them and just dragged them up. And now we're going to build paths and see if they work. Make sure there's no errors and problems and things. Have them auto adjust. Only one's messed up, but it looks like everyone else is fine. So double click on the error, drag your mouse, and it will tell you which one's wrong. So that one says it's on a too steep of a slope. Pretty much it's kind of like floating, I guess, in midair or something like that. I don't see how that's technically true at all. That doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe it's the geometry. No, it says it's on a slope. Sometimes you'll get geometry errors when you have a lot of complex geometry like on the staircase, and there'll be holes and errors in the geometry where they will fall through, or we'll have invisible walls or things like that. So we might want to test that out and see. But I'm not going to get too thorough into that right now, simply because it's just a simple tutorial. There is an easy way to fix that though. Let me see if that is the problem, because it actually isn't too hard to fix. So we come in and hide our active brush, delete the add for the staircase, rebuild geometry so it disappears, go to the add special brush, go to regular brush and make it a semi-solid brush, and then build that. Semi-solid brush means it does not collide with other brushes that aren't of the same brush. So like this cylindrical wall, it's not going to pull out any of its faces and mesh the two together into one shape like it was doing before, and that in a lot of instances cuts back on a lot of geometry errors like the one I was probably having. So now let's build lighting and pass again and see if the error is fixed. Beautiful. Okay, that's what the problem was. So just by doing that, we fixed all the geometry errors that could be potentially on this staircase. So if you get that problem, that's just something to consider. Just add special brush and make it a semi-solid add instead of a solid add. And then let's just realign this, do the Shift S, make sure all the surfaces are 4, and we might as well start putting an actual texture on these so it doesn't just look like some weird dotted brick thing. So I like asylum textures from Bedlam and stuff like that, so let's do those. Some kind of concrete or something. That wouldn't be bad. And then for the walls, select all brush, walls. Yeah, that looks nice. And then something you want to watch too is making sure that the objects that are being represented on the textures, like these bricks for example, the things that are being suggested on the texture, actually look up to scale for the player. So the player is probably going to be about this high. So you got to kind of consider, are these bricks too big? Do they look unrealistic next to a player? If you think so, just go to the scale and make them smaller. There we go, that's twice the size that they were before. That looks a little bit more presentable to what would look like something that's proportional to the size of a person. So don't be that douchebag that makes that shitty map that has like the really blown up textures all over the place where he doesn't adjust anything. That just looks ridiculous, you know. I guess we can do that for the floor and the ceiling. Looks cool. Shift F for floors and ceilings. Just click on it. Alright. Another thing we need to take into consideration is filling up these pitch black spaces where there's no light. And we'll do that with the zone info in a second here. So let's build lighting, get that sharp edge lighting back. Alright. So we're getting there. We're pretty close now. We're 40 minutes in. So now we need to make some kind of trader somewhere, and we need to make zone info for these lightings and zombie volumes. So let's start with the zone light, since we're already kind of in that state of mind right now where we're working on the appearances and the flow of the map and all that shit. So you're going to go to the Actor Class browser and expand the info category and just select zone info. Don't expand it, but just do the zone info. And make sure that the zone info actor is placed somewhere within the actual room, because it's temperamental like that. It has to be inside the room. So I'll probably go into that in the next tutorial about zone portals and optimization, which this is relevant to, but for now I'm just going to keep it simple and just tell you to put it inside this room, somewhere in one of your rooms. So what's going to come into play here is mainly the zone light. Anything else is pretty much irrelevant, I guess. Actually, we need this for fog, I forgot about that. So turn on distant fog, build geometry to get it to show up, and you use F to toggle it on and off. Might not see it too well in here. Build the lighting. It's coming up a little bit, but not much. Do the zone light, let's do like a greenish. The thing to know about fog and why you kind of need it is the fog is kind of a atmospheric effect that Killing Floor uses to determine the intensity of the color multiplied on your screen. In other words, it's kind of like an artistic overlay that adds a color filter kind of film effect to your screen, so it kind of makes the map feel a little bit more atmospheric. You can bypass this with an actor class browser. I think it's called level game rules KSP level info right there. I think if you place that in, there's a setting in here that will turn off the oh fuck me, see things crash, things happen. Fuck it showed. Give me a sec. Good thing I saved. That's why you gotta save, so I'm kinda glad that happened so you get a first hand experience of how it can fuck you in the ass. So come back in. Where was I? I didn't have the zone info in, probably. Info, zone info, place that shit. But yeah, as I was saying, there's a thing you place in there, it's under level game rules, level info, and this will allow you to bypass the fog overlay. And it's basically, I think it's use vision overlay, you set that to false, and that will make it so that you don't need fog. If you want to use the fog's atmospheric effect, you use that in the zone info. God damn it. Zone info, you turn on distant fog, and then you go to zone lighting, do the fog color, and anything that's going to be mid-gray is going to multiply about the same brightness. It affects your brightness of your vision. So if it's light fog, it's going to make the map really intense looking. It's going to brighten it up and look really bright. If it's dark, it's going to darken it up. So you got to take that in consideration. We want it to look somewhat dark, I think. So let's do that. I'm going to do a negative distant fog start, so it's foggy around us. And let's try that. Just to make it look like it's just filled up with smoke or something. Kind of like that, kind of smoky, hazy looking. So there we go. The 8,000 might be a little high. You can try 12,000. Actually, 8,000 is good. And that's going to be fine for that. So that's how you do that. Make sure that this is on still. Okay. I may have to just probably slow them down or something. Alright, turn our pass back on here. Actually, no, never mind. Leave those off, they kind of get in the way a little bit. So another thing we need to do with the zone info is make it so that these pitch black areas have a little bit of light filled into them. So go into the zone light, you're going to do like a brightness of about 1. We'll do a little bit of a hue. Let's see, this one's hue is about 68. So let's match the lighting a little bit. Do something like that, see how that looks. And it should fill up this blackness to match the color we set. So there we go, wherever it was black before, now it's got like a greenish fill. Let's not do it that intense, it's a little bit too much. A little bit less color too. Pull out the color a little bit more gray and more dark. So 5 and 35 on those two. The hue's fine though. There we go, I think that's good. So it just kind of fills up those shadows a little bit, makes them a little bit more, you know, matching the map. So that's that. So now we just need a trader and zombie spawns. So let's make a cylindrical volume spawn, a zombie spawn. Actually, no, let's make a cube ones. We'll do about 500 cubed, 500 each one of these. Hassle. Alright, okay. Those actually might be a little bit big, but it doesn't matter. It's a test. So we'll just throw these on the stairs. Yeah, let's do about 300. Let's right click on the volume here and go to zombie volume. we're gonna make one zombie volume and configure its settings and then duplicate it a bunch. The respawn time is gonna be instant. The maximum distance the player can be left at 600, that's fine. The spawn desirability is like a priority. You can change the allow plain sight spawning. Allow plain sight spawning is if it's going to allow players to be able to look directly at the spawn and let things still appear. So there's no obstructions much in this map, so that's probably a good idea to have that on. So we're going to leave that in true. Debug zombie volume is going to make like it's going to spawn some kind of an object inside here to make sure that it's working. Then you have different categories to simplify the type of stuff that can spawn. Leaping Zeds, normal Zeds, massive. Volume enabled, can respawn time is like a interval. So how long before it can spawn more things out of the same volume. I like that on 0 because I'm into really fast spawning. I like that setting. And that's pretty much all I got to worry about. And then the spawn desirability is priority, and the minimum distance to player is pretty much the how much units away this has to be before it can spawn. So it gives you some cushion. If you were approaching this, it wouldn't spawn things in it to cut you off. You'd have to be like probably back here. The touch disable time is if a player passes through it, it's how long that zombie volume has to wait. Let's do 5 seconds on that. And the multiplier is whatever spawns out of this, it's going to multiply that amount. But you can get errors with that, so you got to watch out about that. You can have a lot of problems. So with that, I'm just going to duplicate a bunch of these, put them around the map. Let's do a select all matching type. Go to select matching all zombie volume. I'm just going to duplicate these and just how am I going to do this? There we go. And just kind of stack them up so every floor will have them. Constant spawns. Remember, there's only a certain amount it can have in the map at a time, so it's not like every one of these is going to be utilized. But it at least gives it the possibility that there's a lot of different locations they can spawn from. That's pretty much all it is. It's adding diversity of options. And there you go. So now the map is fucking chalked up pretty extreme with volumes. So we shouldn't have any problem with things spawning. So I'm not sure if you need to build geometry again on those, but let's go ahead and do a build all. Let's make sure everything's up to date. Okay, so now we just need a trader, and that's basically going to wrap up this video after the playtest. So let's put in a trader just so that if you're somewhere in the map down here at the bottom, you can buy something, I guess. It doesn't look like we have much room to put a room in. We can probably put a door in right here and put some kind of room in. I guess we can do that real quick. So let's build like a little cube room. Make sure active brush is turned on. Okay, it's down here. Just move this out over here. Might be a little bit easier on the top view. Bring that right down there. And the height looks good. Now let's make it more doorway looking. Actually, the height does not look good. Yeah, it needs to be lower. So let's make it about 250 high, about 150 wide, and about 80 breadth. So there's our doorway. Obviously it's probably should rotate it a little bit, intercept it with this wall a little bit. Make sure it's down on the floor low enough so we can walk into it. Just like that, and then we're going to subtract. So there's our door. Now we're going to reset the rotation. Actually, I guess we can keep the rotation. That looks kind of cool. It's probably going to reset it anyway, though. And then let's put the width, let's make it a little bit bigger. So 300, and then the breadth is going to be like 500. And then a little bit higher, too. I guess we can try to match the rotation. There we go. And just kind of put that in a little bit. And bring that up. Subtract that. So there we go. So we got a little trader room in here now. So we don't have a texture selected at all, so this is the default texture. And let's go back to the asylum text, reload the package, fly down to these good ones, do some kind of a rustic looking green or some shit. Make sure to align them, scale them down a little bit, and then let's also use the texture rotator or movement tool here, texture pan. Just control drag and god damn it, it messed up my scale. There we go. Just kind of put it in like that, I guess. It looks kind of like it belongs there, you know. And then the floor will be a messed up looking floor, like out there. And then maybe a concrete ceiling, I guess. And then the doorway here will be the same as that. Go to the properties, go to alignment, make sure it matches the scale so it looks like it wraps around. And then floor here can be that concrete, and same with the top. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Just build the light bulb in here, build geometry, build lighting. Kind of put it up in the corner a little bit, back over here, get some kind of interesting shadow stuff going on. Just there in the top. Make it a really bleak looking light. Barely has any glow at all. 25 or something, and have it be like a really eerie color. I don't know if that's gonna look good or not. Actually, I kind of like that. It looks pretty cool. So go back to Shift S, make sure all the light maps are high detail. Build your lighting one more time, just so that room and the doorway and everything get the good lighting, the good shadows. There we go. Now they're sharp. And that's pretty much going to do it on our rooms. So take this room that we already have here. We're going to make this into a trader room. So we're going to right click on this volume. These are all the different volumes you can do in the game. We've already used the zombie volume. The one is going to be called shop volume, so wherever shop volume is right there. Hide your active brush or move it out of the way, whichever you want to do, and you'll see this volume here. The shop volume, always enabled, we're going to put that in true. Actually, that's not true. Yeah, it should be fine with default settings. Always enable to make it so that all the traders will pretty much be open at the same time, I think. But I don't think it makes it so you can buy stuff during the game. I think they turn off all the time if the wave is going on. So we don't got a fancy trader or door or anything in there, but at least it's a room for the trader, you know, it's something. So maybe in a different tutorial I'll show you how to do the put in a trader chick and show you how to make the teleporters so that you get kicked out of the trader and like the automatic door that opens and closes and stuff. That's not too hard. You can pretty much just copy that from a default map if you wanted to and just kind of specialize it for yours, you know, place it in yours. It's kind of what we can do, because it's really easy. But that's pretty much going to do it as far as the map goes. So I think everything is in now. So now we're going to do a playtest and try to wrap this up around an hour long. So let's go to that now and give it a playtest and see how it works. So that's going to be it for the mapping itself, and hope you learned a lot. And if you like it, stay involved, and in the next tutorial I'm going to show zones, portals, optimization, pretty much how to make it so that whatever's on your screen, or what isn't on your screen I should say, isn't being rendered as much as possible so that you save on frame rates. That's pretty much what optimization and zone portals and anti-portals and stuff like that is. So I'm going to go into those in the next tutorial, and that involves a little bit more concept around the zone info after class here. So yeah, thanks for watching, and let's test the map. Alright, so here we are in the game, and Now it's time to playtest, so we're going to go to solo. We're going to go make sure we're in the killing floor game type, so we get all these KF prefix maps. We're going to go down alphabetical order. Sometimes if it's a recent map, it's the first time it's showing up in the menu, first time it's been exposed to the menu in game, it will be at the bottom of the list. If not, if it's not there, then it for sure should be, if it's been prefixed properly with the KF hyphen, it should be in alphabetical order. So there's our map there, test basic. You can see it's got the image, just that typical POS, texture I just threw on there to demonstrate. It's got my name on there, superimposed for people to see. This number here, like I said, this setting is completely irrelevant for killing floor because it doesn't influence anything, but it looks a little bit more professional if you actually make an attempt to put a player count on there. 1 to 6, and I think the official maps actually do that. It'll say some kind of number, 1 to 6. So 2 to 6, 1 to 6, whatever. Also, might as well say this now. If you kind of like the concept of the spiral map, I have this map called Ammonia. It only took me like 3 days to make, and it goes off of the concept that we're doing in this tutorial. It has pretty much a big cylinder room with spirals around it, but it's only got like 3 floors in it compared to the other one that has like our test map that has like 20 floors in it. So if you like that concept and think it might be fun, there's a map to try out right there. So let's go to our map. It's going to leave it on beginner and short, so it's really easy to kill, or not really easy to kill, not very much to kill, so we can just go right to the trader. I don't want to spend too much time killing stuff. So we go demo. So as you can see, the fog overlay, it added a little bit of brightness. We might want to make that a little bit darker if we're going to use the fog. It kind of looks like things are a little bit brightened up. Just have to go into our zone info settings and darken the fog down. The spawns are working. You can see the clots running around up there, up top, coming from various different locations and floors. So we definitely know that it's working pretty diversely. The floor is glowing here because of the bloom settings, which are in your level properties window, where we put the same window that comes up where you put the description of the map and the author and all that. But it's in the bloom section of that level properties window, and we just have to reduce down the settings a little bit if we want to get a different result here. So aside from that, it's playable, the lighting looks decent. Aside from the bloom and the fog being a little bit brightening, it actually looks pretty good. And there's our trader room there, which has kind of an interesting look to it. You have to put like a room in there and put some stuff in here, and to make it a little bit better. So in some tutorial I'm going to have to come in and teach you how to make the trader doors and the teleporters and things like that. And in the separate tutorial also I'm going to show you how to make a screenshot for your map, but I'm not going to put those in any of the main core tutorials. The core tutorials are pretty much intended to just show you how to utilize most of the components of the editor based on a conceptual point of view, like I said. So as it becomes relevant, certain sub-editors become relevant. So they're based more on concept and purpose, like how to make a basic map, introduction of the editor. So the next one's going to be optimization. So pretty much how to make it so whatever's not showing up on your screen isn't being rendered by your GPU and CPU, so it's not consuming your resources for something that you're not looking at on your screen. So it's just optimizing the balance between what your computer's running at and what's required to run, compared to what you're actually really getting out of the experience of the game. So what you're seeing on your screen. Why would you want to render a bunch of stuff that you're just not actually seeing or knowing is in existence from where your point of view is? And so that's going to be the next tutorial, because that's really important, optimization. Just gotta kill these. The AIs on beginner, so they're really stupid. I didn't put any things in, but just define the ability to drop down. So they're pretty much having to wind down. Usually they'll just drop down here, but because those paths are so far up and out of the way, they don't make connections down to these paths, so they have to go the long way around instead of just dropping from whatever floor they want. You could do that, but it'd take a lot of work and some sketchy stuff to make it happen. You'd have to do a lot of force paths, and then it's a different type of navigation point control where instead of just throwing in path nodes, you pretty much force their paths to go from one path to another. So you'd have to do some kind of a jump spot or a force path to show them that they can jump down. See, once he's in my line of sight and he's closer here, just hanging over the edge a little bit, you can see me and probably jump down. So sometimes I'll make the choice to do that. So yeah, this map's not very practical right now for playability. It's pretty shitty, but it's just a basic map, basic working level. So now we can come in and the trader works just fine. Push E in there and everything's good, so we can sell our weapons, buy whatever we want, and all is well. So that's going to be it for this tutorial. Like I said, the next tutorial is going to be the concept of optimization for your frame rates and experience in general. Optimize your map so that you're not lagging around a lot for something that just doesn't need to lag. Optimizing your resources of what's on your screen. And after that we'll get more in detail with static meshes and more of the in-editor stuff as they become relevant. So more advanced map making stuff, and it should be pretty good. So this should pick up pretty nicely, I think. So thanks for watching, and continue watching the series if you want to dig deeper into map making for Killing Floor.